Hello, welcome to Waiting for Game, podcast presented by Melee Stats. I'm your host, Give Me That Wheat, on this beautiful, lovely, just a nice warm summer day in the middle of spring. What a wonderful day. Hopefully we got a wonderful episode to go along with it. I've got my wonderful friend here, Edwin. He's the only guy who actually knows what a major is. Edwin, what's going on?
Not much, man. I'm really excited to be here. We're fresh off a weekend with a big victory for our sponsored player, Pipsqueak. We got a great New York City regional coming up, and we got the head of the regional sitting here with us right now. I'm excited to talk to you, Wheat, and I'm thrilled to have Ryobeat on the show. Ryobeat, what have you been up to? How's it going?
I've been tired, honestly. I definitely just got off of Radio Melee, actually. And just going back to shill function again. I have a million unanswered DMs, but I'm just trying to truck along until function comes. But tired, but definitely still moving and doing stuff. So feeling good.
For sure, doing the publicity tour. I mentioned how beautiful a day it's here. It's in the 70s here where I am, and perfect to have a guest who is in the MPGR 70s. For all the people out there who said we would never have someone who's ever been ranked 72nd on the top 100, well, here it is. We proved all of our doubters wrong.
They're so dumb.
Edwin, hey, I'm wearing shorts right now. Speaking of the weather, are you wearing shorts? What's your situation?
No, I'm wearing jeans. The weather in Boston has been in the late 40s, early 50s all day. Pretty cloudy, so a little jealous.
Short situation?
I went into the office, and I don't know if they're socially acceptable for men in the workplace, which they should be.
We might need to get into that. But
we need to unionize men. The most oppressed group of society. It's never taken seriously. We really. I don't know why I can't wear shorts because I'm showing a little skin. It's nice actually, But I didn't bring a jacket, so that was cool. So I got to feel the air on me. Just have my NYCMelee merch over here, which you can get at NYC-Melee-to-Creator Teespring something in some link. It's really cool. That's why I wore it to work.
I personally think it's amazing that you have this merch to talk about your brand and NYCMelee, especially with NYCMelee having so many W's as of lately, this big regional coming up. I think I definitely think this is an amazing feeling you have as someone, part of the leadership of a group of people to have merch to support not only your brand, but your brand's continued success in all these areas. We on a slightly different topic though, what happened at Low Tide City this weekend?
I really do love Nico's this black sweatshirt with a white design on it. I want to say that someone at Low Tide City was also wearing a black sweatshirt with also a white design. I'm having trouble putting my fingers on it. Was it Mech? No, I think it was wearing a Persona 5 hoodie.
Yeah, it was a little red.
Oh, it must have been Axe then, right? I think
Axe, yeah, he loves. No, he was wearing a hat that said Pikachu, and then he was wearing a Teppo Star. Who else was it? So it's not Axe. Oh, is there anyone else?
Did Bobby Big Balls get a sponsor?
I don't think it was Bobby Big Balls, but I think we're closer. This person does wear glasses. I remember glasses. Well, I guess it'll never come to us. Maybe it'll come to us later in the episode. But let's talk about who won this one. This was a young man with a bespectacled young man in a slim black, very very slimmy, looked very svelte. We're talking, of course, about the international sensation, Pipsqueak. Yeah. Now, I am not one to take credit for someone else's wins. However, Melee Stats probably is who we should be, who everyone should be thanking for this this monumental win. Pipsqueak gets here on his own. Yeah, who knows? He probably gets.
Well, I thought it was the cheat who kind of made that kind of happen.
You know what? This would not be the first time that a member of BTS tries to take the credit for all of the stuff that MS has made and put into the world. This is the long lineage.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, we're talking about Melee Stats. The first member of the Melee Stats Free Agent Showcase, more to come in the near future. We're talking about Pipsqueak. So Pipsqueak, this is his little. Well, we're seeing the Pipsqueak Victory Tour currently, right? It didn't start off as a Victory Tour, but I think now we can say that it is. Let's kind of get into this because we didn't talk about Low Tide City. We didn't preview it. We had a lot to talk about last week with Summit and Pound and tournament experience and all that type of stuff. We kind of got into it with Darkgenics in a pretty good episode. In a great episode last week. But we didn't get to preview this. Edwin, going into this, I want your honest opinion, as honest as you can be now that the events happen. What was Pipsqueak's chances in your mind of winning this?
So I thought he had a decent shot. Before he dropped out, I thought Hungrybox would be a little tough. I thought that Pipsqueak could have a shot at upsetting Axe. I didn't expect him to 3-0 him, frankly, the way he did. I know Axe was talking about having controller issues after the set or whatever, but still, like, this is within a range of possibilities, right? And I frankly thought Pipsqueak was playing strong enough to where even if Axe was playing well, like, that was a scary opponent for Axe. But I thought Pipsqueak had a bit of an underdog shot. I believe the seeding had him at 6th or whatever. They had him matched up with Salt in winners' quarters, and I thought that he put on an absolute clinic against him. And frankly, he looked great against Axe a day later. He looked amazing versus Mech again. I know he said he didn't feel amazing and he just felt like he was playing all right versus Mech, but from the outside in, I mean, even Pipsqueak on his he thinks this is B game. There's so many situations where he just had him in like knockdown or off stage, and it just looked automatic, like clockwork. I'm really proud of him for winning this weekend. Obviously, as you briefly mentioned, he's been in the States for a little bit now, and it's been fun to track his progress at different events and seeing his trajectory, seeing him get a chance to perform against all these really exciting up and coming players. And I'm glad that the Melee scene got to see a little bit of that at Low Tide City.
Yeah, I think he's been off to like a pretty decent start. I feel like some people may look at Pound and say, oh, blah, 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 Mad Tyro set. But I don't think people talk about his losers run, which was incredibly impressive because he beat Skurzo, Dreffin, and JoJo, and then only losing to Logan, where he was trying out his Falcon on like a big stage for the first time in a while, and it was still game 5. Plus the LTC win, I think he's proving himself against all the up-and-comers in a way that kind of shows that, if you didn't know Pipsqueak before and you thought he was an up-and-comer, that's not the case. Like, he already up and came, you know what I mean? Like, it's more a question of, like, can he crack the next tier? So I hope any doubters have, kind of settled that he's not on that level.
Yeah, so, Ryobeat, you are hosting Pip for this week. I know he just got there, and I know he's already on his way to a local, and it just kind of shows the grind that he's been going on. Even despite the fact that he plans to enter 4 tournaments in 4 weeks. Despite that, he's already entering locals. I don't know. Did you get a chance to talk to him about the trip so far, or what's been going on? Is there any talk that you guys had?
We talked a little bit. I know he's not thrilled about the fact that his ADHD meds got left in Texas somewhere. Hopefully, maybe someone could like ship it to my place somehow. If anyone listens that knows, like, just let me know. Or I don't know, some backup thing could happen. He was a little worried about that, but I think like for me, I think he's in a good place to just do well because I think he's just in a great mood. I think he's really excited about just the opportunity to play all these different people. It doesn't seem like he's particularly bummed if he plays bad or bummed if he gets a certain loss. Like, he feels like just incredibly motivated. Is kind of my assessment on like the conversation I had with him. Like, he came in from a flight and like I'd imagine he was just like ready to sleep, but kind of just wanted to talk about Melee for like an hour. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. So he's feeling
We've all been there.
Oh yeah, in my head, like between us, I was like, dude, I gotta work tomorrow. But he was like, yeah, my Falcon. He was like this big monkey man, and we run up, grab, and I just do whatever I want. I'm like, yeah. He did make monkey noises. Woke up my landlord. He's like he just, I don't know, feels like just a kid in a really big carnival. He just wants to try everything. He just wants to be everywhere. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting event for him. I mean, you mentioned, unfortunately, he will be playing these next few events until he gets back to Sweden. He will be playing it without this ADHD medicine. Or as I said, which legally is a joke, he could talk to, he could find the right 2 and tour at the SoCal local he's going to go to before Summit. I'm sure he could find something. But no, it'll be a bit of a shame because this is what we saw at Pound was a little bit of a disappointment, but you can understand that that's based on travel and really just based on high expectations from what he did last year. Right. Getting 17th, losing to Logan, and having the losers run he had is really impressive for a lot of people. So, like, what we saw at Low Tide City was just kind of more of what we expected. So I really want to see what's going on with him because with any European player you get, there's going to be, like you have to prove within a shadow of a doubt that you're actually good. I think that European players have that burden on them more than any other, like, North American players do. So it'll be interesting to see because I think that if he's able to, continue this level of results, the ones that he was doing at Pound and Low Tide City, if he can do that at Function and Summit, like what we were considering last year, top 30 or so, I think that's really attainable. With what we've been seeing recently, I think he could even go higher. But speaking of players who are in the top 20, in the top 30, I know it was only a few weeks ago where we mentioned Axe. Axe had a pretty decent Genesis. He ended up beating Fiction. Got 13th, I believe. Pound was, I think he ended up getting maybe 13th again or something like that. Something that is fine, right? It's a really good placing. But what we've seen of Axe recently has not really been the Axe that we've seen years ago. And I know that there was a lot of talk about his controller. So I'm not about to say that this is going to be the new Axe. But we have seen these kind of performances recently, maybe not to this level. And it's basically just like, it's really interesting to find out how, like the acts that we're going to see, right? What acts are we going to see at these next events, whatever events these might be. And Edwin, I know you had a lot of thoughts about, what's going on with acts currently, what's going on with his characters, all this type of stuff. What do you, how do you view acts currently?
I'm not quite sure. The one thing I'll say is I was very impressed that Mech was able to beat him. Historically speaking, before the pandemic and everything, other than I think Wizzy, Falcon was one of those matches that we didn't really see Axe lose in that much.
Yeah.
He would drop sets here and there, but he had very dominant records against the field. That's something that I'm not quite used to seeing. Honestly, I know that there's, Axe has always been a volatile player historically, right? He's always had peaks and valleys of performances. He's had slumps. But I think it would be, I think anyone would be lying if they said that the last year and a half hasn't been one of the biggest challenges of Axe's competitive career as a player, right? But I think even just watching his matches and going, not just looking at the numbers, I think he's still got it. There's still moments where he looks like the old Axe. I mean, he was one SD away from eliminating Mango at 13th at Genesis, right?
True.
I think Axe is one of those people that you can never quite. I mean, there's some matchups that maybe he's got a bit of a rough road ahead of him, but Axe against any Spacey, is he going to be favored to win versus IBDW or Leffen or someone even Moki again? Probably not. But can he take a set? I think he still shows glimpses of it. As if I see Axe versus Logan, Kadoran, or Zane in bracket, am I going to think that's with Zane, who knows? But Kadoran or Logan bracket, am I going to bet against Axe? Probably no, right? If I see Axe against a lot of people, it's still Axe, right? So I mean, just thinking about his performances, I think even his Smash World Tour Championship showing all the way in December, he didn't make it out of pools, but I didn't think it was a bad showing. He just he lost a set against another very strong player like Sora, right? So I think if anything, he'll rebound a little bit, but we might have to. I mean, not might have to. We already have, but if you're going into this waiting for the return of Axe as a top 5 player, and as one of the players we talk about with a chance to win a super major, I don't know if we'll see that again for a little bit. I don't know if I've seen enough to make me think that he can get back to that. But it is still Axe, and people have bad days at tournaments all the time. If Axe came back at his next tournament and beat I don't know, like Ben Captain Face Roll, and then took a set off like a top 15 play like Kadoran or something to get to winners quarters in the big tournament, would I be shocked? Probably not, right? Like he's very capable of that. I just think that the whole peaks and valleys thing, like the range of Axe results has always been big. And over the last like year or so, we've kind of had to gradually temper expectations with him, right?
I think that's the big thing. You know, you mentioned his loss to Sora. It's not a bad loss. Sora's really good, but what we were talking about a couple years ago was Axe's top 5 in the world. And it really doesn't seem like he is going to be there. I agree with that. And I think it's something we talked about this entire time, right? It's the depth of the field. We have seen an incredible like amount of people who are able to, I mean, to throw like, Genesis. If I made a top 20 after Genesis, I would probably have to change it immediately after when Pound happened. And Function's probably going to switch things up, and the way that the field is so strong. I mentioned on the podcast a few weeks ago, only a few years ago in 2016, where we like putting people in the top 10 for people who didn't have God wins. The people Shroom didn't have a win on the top 6, and he was 10th. And it's insane to me right now that you could have a player who would be top 10 in the world who is not able to punch up against the top. And I think that's Axe's issue right now, is that a lot of these players who we're talking about, right? If you call him top 20, you're putting him in the same category as like None, or I think Lod's top 10, but or like Polish, or like, there's a lot of really really good players. Fiction,
Acklo.
Aklov, great
Aqua,
example.
absolutely.
And you're like, well, does Axe have the same ability to punch up that these players do? And the answer is probably no. I would feel comfortable saying he's about as good as Slug. Slug, I think, someone who can make a deep bracket run. He did it, right? He fucking got 9th at Genesis. But is probably going to be a person who I would never make a big bet that Slug's going to make a huge run at any tournament if I don't see his bracket. I kind of feel the same way about Axe. I don't know. I think Axe probably has a better ability to beat, like take a set off Zane, or maybe squeeze one off of Leffen or something. But I still put them in kind of the same category. Nico, what do you think about this? I don't know if you have any thoughts on Axe or if you watched his run this past weekend.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I wouldn't categorize it as like he can't punch up, but I think he can't compete with the field and people lower. Like particularly like I feel like his records with like 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 60 or something like that is worse than what I think his record would be with top 10 compared to others in his field. Because I think that there's like a trend sometimes. I think a trend of like older school players that kind of fall off a little bit is that they retain their same like player to player knowledge that they can still keep up with other people. So that's why I'm not afraid of Axe beating Mango, Wizzy.
All right, you've convinced me.
Zane, that type of thing. But here's the thing. Now we have way more Peaches in the meta. We have way more Campy Foxes. We have a ton of Sheik players. And I think that's not a great draw for Pikachu. I feel like Pikachu has always had rough matchups, but I think we had more spacey dominant metas in a way that like favored Axe, especially when he was on top of his game. But now it's a mix of other matchups that are throwing Axe off, plus the spacies, like he's a little off his game, so the spacies aren't as strong. So it's like I think what I think he could do on the top 10 is like fine for a player of like a top 20 to 30 caliber, maybe like in the better of his like field or whatever. But like, you run into, Lot or Mog or Triff or something like that, or you run into like Toussaint, or there's just a lot of like stops along the way. Like if he ever gets to winners quarters, I feel good about his shot. But he can't get there.
He's always had these obstacles, but I think you're right. I think the obstacles are not only still there, but there's more of them than there were before. We definitely made like a fake bracket on an episode before where we talked about, maybe he gets Zamu into Ginger, into Amsa, into Zane, and that's like a reliable path to winners finals. I definitely think that we can see Axe make a large bracket run again, but I think he is a player who's in that tier where I would have to worry about his bracket luck. and that's maybe someone who if I look at Fiction, who I think is a top 15 to 20 player, maybe someone who I'm not as worried about when it comes to bracket luck. Edwin, what do you think?
I'm gonna make a really strange comparison with Axe right now, and I think I've made this comparison on the show before, so it shouldn't be too out of left field. I think Axe. So one thing really quick I'll note before I get into this comparison, we did see Axe play another character other than Pikachu this weekend.
Yeah.
When he tried out Fox for a bit against Palpa, seemed pretty good for clearly not the same level of his Pikachu level of comfortable, but his Fox seemed pretty solid. And I'm gonna bring up Axe in comparison right now to Swift, who I think has made the he's strangely made the Pikachu / Fox co-maining thing or whatever fairly viable because whatever calculus he Swift is using, and let's be clear, I don't think Swift is that far off from Axe right now in terms of his results or where he would be in at a hypothetical super major. I think Swift is very I mean I'd have to look at the field to say really for sure, but I'm down to call Swift a top 30 player, right? And I think one thing you'll note with Swift is he has a plan with his characters, right? He's I'm going against Fox against Peach. I'm going to do Fox against Puff. I'm going to keep Pikachu against Fox, Falco, Marth, and Falcon. Now I'm going to go Fox against Samus and Ices and all this stuff, right? He is committed to this plan, right? And we're seeing it pay dividends for Swift for the most part, right? With Axe, we've seen him experiment with characters, but whatever decision-making calculus he has to come to that final decision of whether he goes Pikachu or Falco or Fox or Young Link or whatever, it doesn't seem quite as committed, or it doesn't seem as structured as Swift's, right? And I think that moving forward, I know Axe feels very strongly about Pikachu and wanting to only play Pikachu and to view himself as a Pikachu main and whatnot. But whether or not he can do it, I do think that it's kind of something interesting to bring up, right? In terms of Axe's general approach, sticking with the game plan, knowing what to expect. I think he could, whether he wants to take a look at what Swift is doing and say, you know what, actually no, I don't want to do that. I want to go only Pikachu. I think it's worth examining. I don't know.
I should say, I'm going to do the little fun thing where I come in. I should say that Swift did place below Axe at Pound. Mm-hmm. I think that was the only tournament they both went to. Swift is a fun comparison because they are both, right, it's going to happen. Swift is the only Pikachu that we've seen of this level since Rory, right? All the way back in MLG days. It's been a long time since we had to really go far back to pull a Pikachu who is not Axe.
That's even before MLG. You're talking about
Rory. We gotta go to Pikachad, dude. That's my dog. I love Pikachad.
Pikachad, yes. Pikachad, 77th on both of his lists. Mm-hmm. He was one of those people who just had the same exact placing. No, but it's been a while since we've had another Pikachu who we can call top 30. So I think the similarities are going to, comparisons are going to happen, whether or not the similarities are there. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know if Axe's plan or if game plan is going to be going more characters, if it should be going more characters. I probably still have faith in him doing pretty well this year, but yeah, I feel like our expectations for Axe, we're a top 10 player, we're a top 5 player at one point, and now we're Axe makes sense if he makes top 25. So we'll see. I definitely think that Tyler is a very interesting person. Obviously, a great summit performance from him. He was he had that set win, made everyone at the summit have a set win, and it'll be interesting to see him at Function. But let's go on. Let's talk about Summit. We mentioned that class with Swift in it. That was a really interesting class. It had a couple people who were not top 100 ever. Swift, it had Null. And we're coming into the second only Summit that has had multiple people who were never top 100. I think the only one that had it before was Yingling on 11. So this is kind of a really relatively recent thing. Usually all the players who made it into Summit were mainstays of the top 100. And luckily, and recently, we've been seeing kind of an influx of players who I wouldn't want to say are lower skilled, right? Because all these players are super good, and in a normal year, a lot of these players would have been top 100. But we've been seeing people who are getting in without the means of having these, like the same resume as people used to in the past. So we had Dark Jack on last week, and obviously we talked a lot about Summit. We talked about what it means to get in and all that, his plan and everything. And we've been talking about the fact that this Summit, the voting process, was a little bit lighter than it was in years past. Not a lot of people opting in. I think, people say the merch was not as good as it was in years past. People also say that Genesis being the date when the shop opened and like campaigning or voting started was hard for a lot of people who were traveling right from Genesis. But regardless, we are looking at a kind of an interesting Summit lineup here. So let's just go over really quickly who we have. Last week when we went over it, Dark, Genix, and Sora had just made it. In the interim, Kodorin, Frenzy made it, and then the last day was Salt, and then Indiana's best player, Blue. Is he still Indiana's best player, Edwin?
Yeah. I think he's the best right now. A bit ago I checked their PR and he was number 2 behind HPR or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
very good
Blue
Falco.
Yeah, he is very good, but I think Blue is number 1 now.
Yes. So it's a bit of an interesting thing, and I want to say before this that I do like all these players, and this is a really fun Summit. But it is like we're at the point where this is not what it was before. We talked about last week. We talked about, well, what do? Do you make Summit once a year? I don't think that's a really good idea. Like, how does Summit change this? But I guess like the question is, does somebody need to change this? We talked about this last week, but Nico, what are your thoughts on this as someone who made Summit? Like, how do you feel about the pool of players? It's both getting broader, but also is the talent level changing at all?
So I definitely agree that the competition is way lighter. Obviously, I think a lot of people have complained a bit about the VIP way of getting in, which is essentially if you just know the 40 people who have $1,000, then you can leverage that to kind of turn it into something. I think that I don't know what's the most cost effective for Summit in terms of growth, because I wonder if, I will say that, like skill aside from the people who are in Summit right now, I don't even think the people who are in Summit have the craziest following or anything like that, or bring any like big brand image or something like that, or some type of content. Like I think Justin has something, but definitely like the exception there. So I wonder if like I personally think that the viewership for this Summit is probably going to be a bit lower because of stuff like this. I think it's kind of losing a little bit of prestige. It's losing a little bit of like, this is supposed to be the pooling of all the world's greatest Melee players and like 2 people who never got to travel, and more so like, it's like 10 people who are like pretty good. Because also, I mean, the other thing is that even through the qualifiers, I think it's even less stacked, because you qualify, but then, if there's a DQ in the bracket, whoever has that DQ path is another person who gets in who maybe isn't as strong as, a past Summit. So I think it's an overall weaker Summit on many fronts. And so I don't know what they really value necessarily, if they want it to be more content oriented or if they want it to be more skill oriented. But I think the current formula is not great. I think there has to be something that we can do that either maximizes skill or maximizes content, because I feel like it's not doing either of those things with the players that get in. Like I think it's just kind of like taking the money like upfront on the VIPs. But maybe I don't know, like I don't know what the checkbook looks like in terms of like, okay, like this is actually way more lucrative to take $40,000 than it is to do these other things. But that's a question for, I guess the bigger stuff. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's kind of my interpretation.
Okay, where Edwin and I are having a standoff, I guess I'll speak. A lot of what you said is very interesting, and I think you're right in some ways. Definitely comes down to a balancing act for BTS if they decide, this is a very good way to make revenue, right? Have $40,000 a year, an event, not even a year. It's a very good way to not go in the red for your event, and continue to pay the people who put on this like great event, right? Disagree with the idea of what Summit is, right? You mentioned how Summit is that's the big one where everyone looks forward to. It's this gathering of all these great players. I think that that's true in a way, and I do think that maybe if you made a top 10, not all the top 10s here, and I think it was like that for Summit 12, but for the most part, I think it's always been this thing, right? Summit, since it started, Kage was in their first one. Kage's great, but he was not top 10. Alex 19 was in the first one, right? Esam made it to the second one. Like, we've seen a lot of great players, but in terms of like, this is the event with 16 best players. If they wanted that, then they would have just invited 16 players. That's how I've always viewed Summit, through the Yingling picks and the Dark Genic stuff, right? All of it. It's kind of according to plan. And I'm kind of torn because I do think that there should be a change to the system, right? People should want to get into Summit. Because I know a lot of people that are like, all right, I'm going to try to qualify through Genesis, and if I don't get in, I'm not doing anything. And if that's what people feel like, then the system must be broken. But what we've got to see from this, Dark Genic, this is first Summit. Blue, obviously his first Summit. Salt, his first Summit. Kudoran, his first Summit as a vote-in. I believe he's made it through qualifiers, and as a backup for Pip when Pip was not able to make it to Summit 11. And Frenzy at his first one. The only person here who's been voted in more than once is Sora. Do you guys remember all the summits we used to have where we'd be like, there's one new vote in, and it's 5 people who we already have seen?
Oh yeah, it's like, and here comes S2J for the 7th time. And just like, oh,
it's fun, right? And I can't say one song's better than the other, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I do kind of want to say, with these qualifiers, I don't know if we saw anyone who I wouldn't say is top 15, right? Pipsqueak was already invited because he the whole Summit shenanigans before, but Summit 11, right? He was invited to this one, but we see Zane. Who else? It's Pluck, Leffin, Mango, right? There's all these great players. HBox ended up making it through there. Amsa would have made it in through Genesis. We have Nunn, who I think is a top 15 player right now. Lod, who I think is a top 10 player. We've got all these people who are really, really good. And honestly, if you were to invite 10 people, I don't think Lod necessarily made it by the time they had to get all the flights ready. And if you had to vote in, I don't think Lod's getting in at all. So I don't know. It's interesting, right? We're at a point where I want to say something has to change, but I might not. As to what needs to change, I might disagree on some fronts. Edwin, what do you think?
I think talking. So first off, I think you put a ton of what I was about to say into great points. I think
we spent too much time together. We don't disagree with each other.
Yeah, but
it's like the most agreeing podcast ever.
I know, it's very weird. I'm like trying my hardest to find something else to say, but okay. Here's what I will say. Okay, I think when we talk about like what will make the event exciting, and is this going to have higher viewership or lower viewership? This is the only part I'll contest. I think pretty strongly from what Nico brought up, and I think it would be the fact that the kind of stuff that goes into it, like, are we going to really be thinking about this if I mean, I don't think this would happen, but the way things are trending right now, but if Mango makes a deep top 8 run and we see an amazing Mango Zane set or even a Mango Cody or even Zane, we're going to be thinking about this. We're going to be thinking, oh my God, Melee is so awesome. This Smash Summit Grand Finals or this top 8 is incredible. If we see a Jmook run there, we see Zane Jmook Part 2, or we see Jmook Leffen, all these things that we're thinking about of, is there diminished interest in campaigning for Summit if you don't get in through qualifying? If the skits are good, if the melee is good, if the quality of the event itself is worth it. I think, first off, I love Blue. I think he'll be a great addition to the event, even though he is definitely the clear outlier and kind of underdog player at the event. I think Justin will be an incredible value add, not just through being fun to watch, but I think his commentary will be excellent on sets. I think his skit potential is really good. I just think that a lot of this we're thinking about it now in terms of what we might have been used to seeing, or this preconceived notion of what we should expect to see. But I really think by the end of it, like, you know, Summit has a way of being like quite memorable, and especially like the last two summits we've had have been pretty excellent about it. I think Summit 10 online, even that was like pretty solid as like a pandemic era summit with Mango Zane Grand Finals. Summit 9, we got to see a lot of games of HBox Plup, and we got to see a lot of like great top 8 sets between like involving Mango, Plup, and Zane and whatnot. Like at the end of the day, I really think that's the kind of like those things, the content, the quality of the event itself, we're going to be remembering that a lot more like in the future, and by the end of the event, then we'll be thinking about questions like, you know, is Moki, you know, could Moki have made it? Would this may have been like a more like legit event if AMSA was there or whatnot? I really think that like the kind of product that's brought to the stream, the experience for all the players there, the, you know, the positive exposure that, or the positive impact that this has on the community overall, I really think it'll dwarf a lot of these things. So while I understand kind of like the, you know, the interesting questions that pop up as a result of, you know, maybe Summit not having 16 top 30 players or so, or even 13 or 14 or whatever, I think at the end of the day, like, you know, it is Melee, where the whether or not the event is good, or whether or not the you know, it's fun to watch, I think it's important to recognize that, you know, at the end of it, there's so many other factors too that go into it. And frankly, I think Salt, Frenzy, I think Pip also as well, Sora, I think a lot of them have potential to, even if they don't make deep top 8 runs, I think they'll give us a lot of like really exciting sets against players that they otherwise wouldn't get a chance to play against. And I think that's kind of like one of the really like historically one of the coolest things about Summit too, right? Like seeing matchups that you otherwise wouldn't normally see, and having a bunch of them all come out once.
Well, how about this? I've got a question for both of you. Edwin, I'll ask you first, just because you were just talking about this. What needs to be changed for Summit 14? Right, we are looking at Summit 13. We talk about it's good, right? The product is still good. There's no change to it. But when you're an organization like BTS, when you are as good as you are at what they do, they tend to think in terms of like, let's stop the problem before it's a problem, right? Right now, Summit's still great. Everyone wants to watch it still. It is still an event that people care about deeply. I think like, you know, on the level of maybe not Genesis exactly, but on the level of like a Big House, or probably even more than like Main Stage or Shine, right? People want to watch Summit, want to win a Summit. Before it becomes a problem, what do you change for Summit 14? What changes are made to the voting? What changes are made to the eligibility? Like, what changes, if any, happen in your mind?
I think something that could be done is that maybe is something regarding like VIPs, like limiting passes that one person can buy for a VIP slot, or like if you buy VIP, you have.
Well, I believe it is currently limited to one.
Wait, what? Limited to one VIP
per person.
Oh no!
Yeah, maybe you have to declare
total.
Maybe you have to declare who you're voting for ahead of time or something, so you can't buy like people's.
I have an idea, if you don't mind me chiming in.
Well, yeah, I mean, the question is going to be asked to you anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah, just because we're on the topic of VIPs, it just hit me as you asked it, because, like, you know, you guys are making all these good points. I'm like, damn, you know, I mean, this is pretty straightforward. I don't know what to do. But then it hit me. Here's what we do. VIPs get no votes at all.
Mm-hmm.
Just no votes, because
I've heard that idea, and you know what? It still sells because you're still going to Summit.
Yeah,
that is exactly what I was thinking, because I was like, could I just do that? I'm like, yes, because you're going to Summit. So I think what we do is like, there's like a spending limit of 50 or something, or some spending limit. I mean, 100 is fine, a couple hundred is fine. Where you can't just whale it in or whatever, or like just limit the amount where like a couple of people decide who the fan favorite is, but you can still give the VIP because they get an insane value. And then just kind of what I care about more is that if we're gonna have vote-ins, I mean, look, I definitely agree with you guys in terms of like, you know, it won't overall impact the viewership of the event. I was a little naive about like, you know, how much I saw that, but I guess I'm thinking about it as like, could the viewership get higher based on who gets voted in? And I think that answer is still yes, based on
Yeah.
who gets in, because it's just a couple people paying. But if we want to keep the money in and it's more of a fan vote in, then whoever the fan vote in, then you have way more individual people tuning in for certain audiences, and I think that improves the viewership. You keep the $40,000, and then it also just gives people who are tuning into Summit and like trying to add value to their player, like they have more reason to get in, because I imagine it kind of goes even deeper where it's just like, not only do you not get Moki in, but you have a bunch of people who would have spent money had they could they have spent it on Moki, because let's say Moki's one of the more viewed players. Like there's a ton of people who would have paid but just won't, because it's just a couple people spending that money. So you can get both, I think, if you kind of run that rule. Maybe that's just off the top of my head. Kind of
Nico, I think that's a fantastic suggestion. I do want to ask you one thing really quickly, though, okay? And I brought this up in last week's show. Do you think the dread that potential campaigners felt when they learned that Dark Gen X was running was enough to dissuade them, and that maybe in a Dark Gen X free Summit, nomination pool, that someone like, say, S2J would have been more open to campaigning, knowing that he would not have to compete with Dark Gen X?
I mean, I think Dark Gen X, he highlighted the problem, but he wouldn't be the only one to take advantage of it, because all you need to do, you don't need to be wealthy. You just need to know the people who are going to get the VIP spots. And whoever that is, and I think the scary thing is that I think Dark Gen X made it very clear he was going to be that guy, but the other scary thing is that you can never know who that guy's going to be. Like what does S2J know about how far Blue's rich friend group goes? So it's too risky to try, because you raise all this money for your community and then that happens. So I wouldn't say it's particularly Justin. I mean, Justin having some money to do it, I think, adds to the fear, but also the unknown adds to the fear of just like, I don't know who the rich guy is going to be. So do I know a rich guy? No. Okay, I will not do it.
Yeah, he was on the show. He talked about how he kind of cited the combination of him getting in was basically, like it was a non-factor. He was going to get in with the way that he was doing it. He kind of cited that as a reason why people might be turned off. There was the thing about campaigning. If you want to campaign, voting would start probably while you were flying back from Genesis, right? It starts that Monday. Merch shop isn't great. There's a couple different answers he gave, but one interesting one was it kind of seemed egalitarian in a way, where he was like, all right, you ran. Do you want to run this time? I'll run. If no one's running, I'll do it. It seemed like very, nice. We're in the 13th iteration of this, and people are like, I already went there. You can take your turn. We kind of saw that all the way back with Europe. Do you remember when like the idea of Europe sending more than one person was unthinkable? So they were like fighting. They're like, no, I'm gonna get in this time. Like you gotta. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I definitely think there are some ways to do it. I agree, Nico. I think that's a great idea. Having no votes for that. How many people who are already going to spend $1,000 are not going to spend $1,000 on it because they don't get any votes? It's not really a make or break if you're already that far in it. But it's something interesting. I wonder if there's like a way that maybe voting could scale. Maybe your first $5 gets you more votes than than the $5 you spend for like $5,005, right? There could be a difference there. I think that when it first started, there was more of a focus. Maybe this is me. This is personal. I think there was more focus on the points that you already got, right? It was like, oh, I entered a couple tournaments. Like I've already got some points. Who wants my 300 votes, right? Definitely felt like it was more of a thing where it was a group of people. It was bigger groups of people as opposed to like smaller groups who are more willing to spend money. I don't know. I think Summit will be able to figure this out. I've been saying this the entire time, is that I do trust BTS. Yeah. BTS has always been someone. Corporations are people. BTS has always been like an organization where if something's going wrong, they will fix it. I trust them to happen, right? It might happen once or twice at a Summit. But if you look at even what we're running right now, right, the Gauntlet phase, it's not the original Gauntlet phase that they run. They ran this, I want to say Summit 11 was the first one. And then they changed it for Ultimate Summit 3 or whatever. And then they were like, okay, never mind, this works better, right? They are trying to fine tune their product, and I don't think it's the company that rests on their laurels. I think it's always someone who's like, okay, what can we do now? What can we do better? And considering how people are talking about voting, how like entrenched in the community they are, I think that there's going to be some change. I wouldn't be surprised. But we're talking about an event with a lot of stacked people. Let's talk about another stacked event. Is this a major? Is this a regional? Is it a national? What is a national? Evan, what do you think? Is it a micro major?
Micro major.
Mega national.
Major. I'll tell you what. I think this might be the most stacked regional, pound for pound, pun unintended, like ever. I think the average entrant at this event is unusually good at.
I don't know if that was a good. What's the pun there? Pound is also a tournament.
Pound was
that was
supposed to be
really
a major,
good.
but a regional.
It doesn't really have anything to. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I like it.
I really don't know why it got as stacked as it did. I don't know what the fuck happened. It like. I think it was just like a combination of okay. I mean everyone has said Tri-State runs deep for a bit. I think that the fact that like Summit is happening and not a lot of people wanted to go to Summit is one half, and then the other half is like Summit practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know. I think with locals right now, like I think there is a bigger density of top players in locals generally because I think that Slippy kids are, they get a little like, cold feet going in person still, still trying to make friends and stuff like that. A lot of them have these, only noobs tournaments and tired of O2s. So a lot of the people that like go to tournaments these days, I think are on average the more ranked players, I would say. But yeah, this is unusually stacked, even with all those factors considered. It still kind of weirds me out. I don't know why it even is this stacked. Like Warrior Knight really is 77.
That's insane, by the way.
And it's like Willie P is like 83. It's just like what, dude?
Nico, I'm going to say a term that I have begun to say a lot on this show. I think I've said it for the past like 3 episodes, but we are in a buyer's market. What that means is that throwing a Melee tournament does not get people there alone. Melee itself is not going to be the only thing that brings people to bumfuck nowhere so that you can play best of 3 in a sweaty place. This is sorry. I know I said that Pound was hot. I'm not comparing it to there.
Yeah.
I know that it does seem like the shoe fits a little bit, but I'm just like a lot of places, right? You're gonna have different attendance than you would in 2016 because the way that we play the game is so different, and also the world's different since then. But I think that one thing is that you need to give a good attending experience, and I think there's a lot of ways to do that. And I think you're selling yourself short. Everything I've heard about Function 1, everything I've heard about NYCMelee in general, all the nightclubs, I think that it's doing a great job at selling the attendee experience. And we are in a time where there are certain things that people will legitimately, maybe just not go to a major for, right? If they're like, oh, we're going to run, non-frozen stadia, people are like, okay, well, I could go to this major, or I could, wait. I could just play Slippy this weekend instead, and then go to a different major that I care about more, right? So I think that you've got a good little thing going there. But yeah, let's talk about Function, because even back in January, right, that was stacked.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple changes since then, but I think this is really a stacked event. Tell me about how this came about, because I know Function 1 was a much smaller event. I think it was all like mainly Tri-State people.
Right. Okay, so Function 1, like you said, mainly Tri-State people. And I think we weren't trying to expand it necessarily. We just got very lucky with this particular thing that happened where a lot of people came up to me and they're like, you're really going to run 200 people in this space? Like, it's going to be cramped. I'm like, well, there's this like extra additional space that's right next door that can fit like 24 setups. That is a free venue space to use, just because it hasn't been rented yet. funnily enough, will be rented the week after function. So we got very lucky.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, super sick. We always had to pay out of pocket for, tables and chairs and that type of thing, but like, $800 or I don't know, maybe like $600 for all that stuff versus the usual venue price of 10,000 for the day at NYC. So we got lucky with that. And the other thing is, I think the big thing that made function really big. Obviously, we did try to fly out some people, and we confirmed some other good players, and I think that built it up. But to I guess focus on the point of like, why do people want to go to this event? I think like nightclub branding is just really good, like you said, in terms of like what are the non like competing factors. I think one thing that like New York City does really well, and I was just talking about it a little bit on Ryomelee, and I always bring it up because I know people have like certain feelings about crowds in Melee, but I think NYC is like, they view not only like the tournament as like, okay, I'm going to compete, but I'm also going to spectate other people competing and make that fun. Like, I know you guys haven't been to a nightclub before, but like once it gets around like winter's quarters time, like there's just a mass of 20 to 40 to 50 people with, drinks in their hands, and they're side betting on everybody. It's Mont Money versus Just Jason, which, maybe seems boring to a lot of people, but for us, it's like New Jersey versus New York. And then I'm side betting, and we're screaming at the top of our lungs on a Wednesday night. And it's just very crazy. And I think of many people in Melee, I use Twitter a lot, and I'm very good at using Twitter. I'm on it all the time. I think I really got like, just social media savvy. So when I got into the position of like head TO of NYCMelee, creating a Twitter account was just like right up my alley, to the point where I feel like everyone has seen the tweets I made and the posts I made about all the things that nightclub does in like a easy to digest and easy to build a narrative around way that they're just like, wow, this looks like really cool. So like the top players came in, and then they're like, okay, I know what they usually turn that into narrative wise and in like a social way. Like, I'm going to go for that reason. So it's like, I guess I said a lot of things, but to summarize it, it's like we got access to a space that finally allowed us to expand like how many entrants we could have. And I think week by week with nightclub and nightclub VIP and all the things we've done for NYCMelee, the branding online just makes people want to go. Like, it looks very cool online, I think.
Definitely something I'm not able to go. But it's just like, dude, those are the events, right? The ones where you can't go, and like it really hits you there, like you really care. Like that's how you know that the branding's working. Because like, dude, I wish I could just get on a train, get up there, but unfortunately, I've got something going on. Yeah, no, I think that what's being created is really special. I've talked to Blur about this in person. I can't differentiate between online and in person anymore. Where's the Scar quote about like what's more real?
Are we the real sons of the digital?
But I believe this was in person. We were talking about the idea of like majors, basically, right? How to build this sort of brand of a major. And there's definitely stuff that tries to take shortcuts, right? Look, I'll say it, GTX super fun. I liked watching it. Yeah. But it's definitely a brand that tried to buy their way into a super major status and worked for the first time. And then when they stopped putting up all this money, right, people stopped going. It became a really, I would say a major probably didn't get to super major level, even though it had a lot of people from the top echelon of play. And then the next year it's like regional, and the year after that it's kind of like a big local. Yeah. So that's kind of what happens when you try to build something top down. But you have tournaments. Look at all the tournaments that we have right now that are big. Most of them have started in like pretty humble roots, right? Battle of BC. Does anyone really remember what happened there? First big house, right? That was just a really tiny thing. Full Bloom obviously is not running this year, as far as I know. It's not been announced, and usually that happened in March. But what we as was completely different than what we saw it end as. Like these events, they work their way through their branding. So I think something like the Function 1 obviously starting kind of smaller, and then you're working in tandem with also this local scene. So it's not only, oh, I watched the Function, I want to go to Function 2. It's, I watch the Function, and then I watch the nightclub every weekend or every week, and now I want to go. Yeah, it's definitely, it's a
Yeah, I mean it's just like it's like I want to go to a New York City event, right? Like a NYC Melee thing, right? Like it's so organically built into the the fabric of the scene and what people come to expect. Like frankly, I've been to a good amount of New York tournaments before, and I can honestly say that even when I was at like back when it was around Nebulous, even if there was no there was no top level talent, there was like a magic in the air being a Nebulous, right? Because
Yeah.
this is like I know Nebulous even when no one is there. Like this is a New York City event, right?
Mhm.
I feel like New York has had that for a while, and I feel like you guys have done a really good job of like maintaining that and kind of bringing in this a whole new era of new players as well. I can say that from a spectator standpoint, that's one thing I'm really excited about with regards to the function. I'm really excited to see how a lot of these players that we've seen like be some of New York City stars over the last 3 years or so, like take on a lot of like the rising talent of like the current generation of players. We talked a lot about like tri-state being a big reason for why this event is so stacked. We're seeing even like Canada come out, so like we
Yeah.
could see something like you could see something like I mean, I don't know why this is exciting. This is like randomly exciting to me, but like we could see Just Jason versus like Zuppy or something, right?
Yeah.
Like we could see Sora take on like Captain Smuckers, right? Like I think
Mhm.
there's so many matchups and like now all of that will be baked into like New York City, right? Like it's
Yes.
not just the players' lore or like the players like themselves that are going to benefit from this. Like I'm gonna be, or like if you're at the function, like you're gonna be at the spot. You're like the sets that happen there are gonna be all part of like New York City, right?
Mhm.
We've talked about this before, right? This like bottom up idea of like how to build a good community and like how to run a good tournament series. We loves bringing up the buyer's market thing. We talked about this with Yingling, right?
Buyer's market with the Yingling, but I've used it in
Yingling.
every episode since. I am addicted to the term for some reason.
Yeah, but there was something Yingling said, right? And more importantly, he said about like no matter who his attendee is, he wants them to have a story at his tournaments that they feel like invested in, that has like a resolution or whatever, right? I feel like
Right.
New York City, you guys are so. Oh, I mean, like it sounds so stupid, right? Like you guys are so good at setting a story for your events, right? But I
Mhm.
really feel like I really feel like that's one of the big things with Function and just like New York events in general. Like it has all this like really cool like cast. I mean, I don't want to say cast because they're just like normal,
Yeah.
right? But it's got like memorable personalities like from the players, the TOs, the commentators to an extent as well. I just feel like the
Mhm.
region's done a really good job of like honing its talent in all these different areas and
Mhm.
like bringing it together and bringing in all this like outside talent as well. And now
Yeah.
people associate that with New York.
Yeah, I'm super thankful for it. I think I think you guys hit on the nail on the head with it's just like the top down thing because I guess I didn't consider it too where it's just like the narrative of like all these people that you saw in the nightclub that through like week by week, little by little, you kind of built interest in and support and all that stuff. Now they're taking on the national people that you've never seen them play, like Whiskers, Just Jason, Smuckers versus Moki, Sora, all that stuff, and it's like, oh wow, I get to see the payoff of watching the nightclub all these weeks. I get to see him on the big stage. And yeah, I'm super. One thing I really, I guess I'll save the more detailed stuff for I guess maybe the next section. But like, I really tried to give everyone a hat, particularly like like everyone who was very passionate about commentary. I'm like, just let's do it. Let's build you up. Let's work on it. New TOs, new players, all that stuff. Like just allowing people to like just as a TO, I feel like my role is to just like one as a TO and two is like someone who's been playing for 10 years and has seen how the scene works and what's valued and what can like work is just to see all of these skill sets and just like how do I bring them up. And less about me running the bracket. Like I think obviously that's a part, but that's not what I would say. I'm like there's people for that I think are amazing, like a 10 dude or something. But I did also want to point on the idea of like the interesting thing of like New York versus the world type of idea because one thing I think that Function is very different at is the size of the tournament. Obviously, I think a lot of people know, blah blah blah. NYC is like a cool place to be, and it's stacked and all that stuff. But if you think about the biggest New York City event of all time, it's actually pretty small. It's Zenith 2014 with 280 entrants, and the reason for that is one, just getting a sufficient amount of out of region people to the event, and two, our venue fees are so ridiculous that it's been impossible to book a venue. So I think like there have been lots of times that New York City has gotten up to the like boiling point of like, okay, when's it going to explode? We built up the local narratives, we built up all the local people. Like, when are they going to like make a splash? And we just never get that splash because Nintendo or venues being too pricey or venues closing down or something like that. All these different things. And I think this is the first time where it's like, okay, this is actually going to happen. Like all the New York locals are going to see the big people. I think is important.
Yeah, no, I think we're definitely seeing that. I want to mention one thing before we actually talk about we've been like we've been talking about all this talent, all how good they are. When I actually get into their brackets, how it's going to look, what's going to go, some predictions for that. But before we do that, Edwin, I think we gotta take a break or something. Me and you. I mentioned buyer's market on every episode. Every episode, you talk about how Yingling says, he wants to give everyone a story. We have been saying the same things. We repeat the same things every week. My idea.
Ambi to come in.
I'm saying we get SF in. Let's get the intern in. Ambi. We talk to Ambi too much. He thinks the same as we do. We need SF in. SF's gonna run our summit episode. He's gonna just like real trial by fire. Throw him in. But no, what we do is we maybe just need to stop talking outside the show, and then we'll like not repeat ourselves like a cartoon character.
Dude, I feel the same way because me and JoJo are the same way. So anytime he posts anything on Twitter, I'm like, he's just saying a summary of our Discord call every time.
It is, yeah, it's really funny. I love Edwin. I love Ambi. We talk every single day, and getting into these shows is very funny because it's just like, yeah, I feel like this is just all that we say, like on Discord. I think it was small tangent. Walton Radar said that they really don't talk besides the mix-up, and I'm like, that's so funny. I could not imagine where I like don't talk to Edwin. Yeah. I only talk to him for 2 hours a week or something like that.
Yeah, when they told us that, it was the most wild thing. I was like, what? How?
Yeah. But here, let's back this up. Let's try to get this back on track. So obviously we talked about the depth of talent, the talent that you see every week on Nightclub, how that's part of why something like Function's fun. Let's actually get into this actual talent because we have been talking about it for a little bit, but this is a stacked event. We keep saying how stacked it is without actually talking about who's here.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting event to me because we make the jokes about, is it a major? Is it a regional? We really have not seen an event like this in a little bit because a lot of players are not very keen on entry events where they're set to win, right? It's a lot of like, oh, I'll only go if X top player goes. If Mango's going, I'll go. If Zane's going, I'll show up. We definitely haven't had a lot of these events recently because back in the day, you'd see like a tournament and it's like Plup, and then the second seed is KJH, and then the third seed is some guy who's really good on their local PR. There's a lot of those events.
We put all our money into the biggest guy and like, wait a minute. I think he's just gonna 3-0 everyone we love and care about as people. For what it's worth, I definitely intentionally, like when we were picking players to like fly out, I tried to pick people that were not like, I didn't want like a Mango at this. I wanted someone who would be competitive with Aklo, not someone who would wash him and not someone who Aklo would wash. I think that makes for the interesting sets. So also just a little thing for TOs, don't spend too much money if he's just gonna come in. If someone's just gonna come in, take all your region's money and then not talk to you, get someone who's going to go game 5.
Yeah, those are the fun ones. But let's talk about the people. So let's do people to look out for and then people who we think are going to win. Because I think one person you mentioned there is perfect. Aklo, not only, I think he's both, right? I think Aklo is a player who can win this. This is extremely doable. He won Nightclub VIP, the first one of that. So this is definitely doable for him. And he is someone, we mentioned it before on our episode before Pound. I called him borderline top 10. Pound didn't really change my mind. I think he's still borderline top 10. I think if you were to make a list of 10 players and include like Wizzy, include someone who we haven't seen. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think Aklo probably is in the like 9, 10, 11, 12 category. I think there's a big toss up there. Aklo is such an impressive player, and really it's just this type of thing where like the more I watch, I'm just like I want to figure out what his matchups are, right? Like I've watched a lot of him online, and it's like trying to find out where the limitations are. And what I've been seeing is the limitations are few and far between. Nico, you know this obviously as someone who's in your region that does extremely well, but like Aklo in the past, even we knew he was good pre-pandemic, but in the past like year or so, I feel like we've seen him become like a really good player to this player who I would say is almost complete. What do you think about like his chances here?
I think they're very good. I think, well, first of all, one trait that he has that I think not a lot of people in his tier has is that he doesn't lose to people. He
Yeah.
never gets upset. He's won every New York event since July in the most stacked region right now on LAN, at locals at least, that attend. And when he goes to majors, he does really well. When he goes to net play events, he does really well. He never gets like a terrible, terrible loss, I think. And that really helps him out. And one really good thing is that he's slowly building up the ability to kind of punch up, right? Like, I think that, he takes sets off Hungerbox on LAN. He beat Cody twice on LAN. Oh, wait, sorry. Hungerbox on net play, Cody on LAN. He's great versus Sheik, so I'm really excited to see him versus Jmook if that happens. And then I'm probably more scared for him if he has to play someone like Slug in a matchup, he's maybe not super familiar in, or maybe like a really like on fire Moki could be something that's overwhelming. I think his biggest flaw is that like if the game plan that he set up originally is not going well, he like kind of tenses up and goes like full dumb aggro or full insane camp, and it's very clear which one you're gonna get, and then you just beat him for doing it. I think like him versus Lot, quintessential like he's getting cold feet because he knows that he could do it, and he's just not. He's trying to autopilot it when he should be actively like playing a lot, but he doesn't. So I think there's a lot of pressure for what it's worth. Like by the numbers, I think it's good, but I think he recognizes the big pressure to win this, and I think the pressure is on and it's very felt. So I worry for him in that way. Not any particular matchup, but like, can he do it? Like, can he like show up that day and play?
Which generally those players, I mean, I don't want to speak for Aklo or anything. Those players tend to become players who get a lot better, right? Like a lot of those players tend to figure that out. That is something where, remember Cody, we were like, well, yeah, but can he do it? Right. It's like Cody's, his like, sorry. There was this narrative around him that if he gets upset, he doesn't make losers runs, right? That was the whole thing with Cody. And then he made that big losers run at Summit. Like the players who it's outside stuff, outside the game stuff like that, I tend to not worry about too much. But I think you make a great point with Aklo. And I like you bring up Moki because that's a really fun comparison to me because those are two players. Both play Fox. Hey, both play Blue Fox. How about that? They both play Fox, and they're both in the same tier of player, I would say. I think they're 10 to 15. Moki probably, just because of his Genesis performance, the Eggy loss, probably I would put maybe a little below. But they're players who I think would do very well if you gave them, 100 tournaments or whatever the old SSBM rank thing is, right? I think they do really well. But Moki is someone who I do think, it's not someone who I'm like, oh, yeah, he's never going to get upset. Moki is a little scarier. Aklo, not that way at all. And that helps over the course of time. I mean, I know that Aklo's busy. I know he's got school, and I know he's got tests and everything, so I don't know how much we're going to see of Aklo. But with the data that I've seen, give me 5 more Aklo tournaments this year, and I feel pretty damn good about it, right? Like whatever results we're seeing, I think are very, he can replicate them. I think they're very, very realistic that he can. Aklo is a super strong player here. Edwin, there's a lot of players here. I know we're not going to get to mention them all, but is there anyone who kind of catches your eye as a player to watch out for?
Yeah, I think there's a very obvious one, and he just got second at Genesis. I'm really excited to see how J-Mook performs at this event. I think with regards to his his potential, who's to say, right? This guy could be he could be top 5 in the world. He could be top 15 or top 20. Like, we don't know, right? Like, we just have to see more of him, right? So I think we're going to learn a lot about J-Mook these next 2 weeks, and we're going to know just where he sits and kind of like the melee hierarchy, like who he can beat, who he might struggle with, how different kind of players will do against him. And one thing I want to note about J-Mook in particular is, like, you look at his records even as far back as something like Smash World Tour. It's pretty astounding. Like, we're talking about someone. It's not like this is someone who just had only one good tournament performance where he beat a bunch of people and then we never saw him again, right? It's like, if you look
yeah, I think what Edmund's trying to say is that, like, we talked about this on our podcast before, right? J-Mook's performance at Smash World Tour. Okay.
Wait.
You cut out there. We had technical difficulties. I tried to cover for you, but go back. Let's hear this wonderful Edmund point again.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, what I was saying is, like, the volume and rate of wins that this guy was getting. It was like, okay, like, we've known for a while that when he was in upstate or whatever, when we only saw him once a year at CME on LAN, it was like, okay, this guy's like, he can compete with top 50 players, right? Then, like, when the pandemic started, he was beating people like Ginger, Nunn, Polish, like this whole long list of people, and he was like beating them like pretty consistent. It's like, okay, this guy looks like he's like top 20 in the world, right? I think for Blur rank, I might have even had him like 15 or something in my ballot, right? And that was like at the end of Smash World Tour. Then at Genesis, we see him beat IBW, Plup, Wad, and Nunn. So we're talking like he might have just beaten like 3 top 10 players in a row, right? So it's like
all those people are top 15, no matter how you slice it, right?
Yeah, no, literally the worst possible interpretation is that this guy is heavily favored against like top 15 players. And like when you look at something like that over the course of a year, it's like, the possibility of J-Mook potentially winning a super major. When are we going to start thinking of, like, what if his second place run at Genesis is like not a fluke? What if, like, this is actually just like this new era of like this new player who we knew was around for a while, was pretty good? What if, like, the actual idea of how good he was just like he could just win a major or like dominate a super region like this? Or was his Genesis run a byproduct of a bunch of other circumstances? Do we see a return to Earth from him here leading into Summit? Does that change how we view his trajectory moving forward and his matchups against the field? I think, there's so many players to look at for this event, but I am especially excited to see J-Mook return because however way he performs, it'll give us an idea for how he'll perform in Summit. And at the end of Summit, I think we'll finally like have a clear idea of just where J-Mook stands. And this is the second step of his journey this year.
Nico, what do you think about that? You're a player. Obviously, New York, he is.
Okay, give me 1
State.
second. Someone's knocking on my door. 1 second.
Oh, okay. Hey, this is a fun first. What do you want to talk about, Edwin? We've got some downtime.
A lot of fun locals coming up. I know pipsqueak's at
No. Let's what hey, Patriot season's coming up soon.
Yeah, I wasn't too thrilled
but
about
surely.
that.
What you got any Patriots jerseys you're gonna wear on the show when the season starts up?
Maybe I'll have to check and see what I have. I had a Vince Wilfork jersey a while back, but I think I left that at my parents when I was over there.
You're a big you love metal. Do you have any like fun metal shirts you want to wear on the show?
I think I have a Periphery shirt somewhere in my closet in a while. I've actually been listening to a good amount of metal again.
I hope this isn't your touching grass segment.
No. It's not. My touching grass segment is or the segment officially called Touching Grass.
We don't need to. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Nico, everything good?
Yes, all good.
Okay, so
what were
you are a player. Obviously, you are New York City. J-Mook is upstate New York, but he is a player who has been on lots of people's radar for a while. How do you see this event going for him?
You know, I honestly think. Well, I was gonna bring up something that I think is probably like kind of tangent.
Mhm.
But I kind of want to bring it up just to contextualize all this because I think we talked about, this is a big tournament for Aqua, a big tournament for J-Mook. I think it's also a big tournament for Cody. And the reason I want to bring this last set to Aqua and J-Mook and maybe Mogi online. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But I think, I love Cody, super important, but like, I think he likes to think that he's in his own tier, like Zayn and Mango. But I think recently we've been seeing that, he can lose to a lot more players. And I think that the reason I bring that up, along with the J-Mook talk and how good do I think he's going to do, is because I just think this for J-Mook, there's also the same amount of pressure. I don't know. I I don't have a direct answer to that, but I feel like with all the conversations I've been having with everybody, it feels like no one is like going into this very comfortable. I feel like J-Mook, Aklo, and Cody have a lot to prove. Like Cody wants to prove that he is dominant. He's closer to Zayn than he is anybody else, and people need to stop, shit talking, whatever. J-Mook needs to prove that Genesis was not a fluke, and Aklo needs to prove that just because he couldn't travel because of school, that doesn't mean he's not a top 10, like borderline top 7-ish player. And I think they're all kind of feeling it. I don't know who's really going to come out on top. I think the narrative is really interesting. I definitely, like, in a social media post, called it that I think that this tournament will crown a king of New York, because I think they all like have different variables to them that make it interesting. Cody's really good on the big national stage.
Mm-hmm.
Aklo's way more consistent than all of these players, and dominates locals, regionals. And then J-Mook is the big wild card. Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool that they've all traded sets. They all have something to prove, and they all are like considered good and considered to have pressure for like completely different reasons.
J-Mook is definitely an interesting person here. We're trying to figure out what, like, I think the thing about his Genesis run, which really makes me think that that's probably not a fluke, is that we've saw so much, so much good melee from him through all these different things, right? If he chain grabbed 8 Sheiks to winners finals, then it's like, well, okay, maybe he's just too good at the Sheik Ditto. But he didn't, right? He beat Plup, who's a good, very good player. He beat IBW. He beat one of the best Foxes in the Sheik matchup, personally, if you ask me. He beat None. He beat Laud, who is a top 10 player currently, by like almost any metric you look at it. And it's just like, we saw so much of him where if it happened differently, if the players were different, I might get a little more worried, if it were 2 Falcos and 2 Marths or whatever. But the spread that we saw him do was so good. I mean, I'm not about to say he's top 5 in the world or anything. I would like to see what happens here before I say that, and Summit. But yeah, what he's doing, I feel very confident in him. But you're right. This is a really cool thing, because I legitimately think that any of these top 3 people can win it. Also, we have a lot of good players here who we didn't mention. Moki is amazing. We talked about him. He could pull this out. We have not seen Slug put it all together in one run.
But he has way less peaches in this run, which is important. There's only Wally and B-Bats to worry about this time. I think every bracket he's entered is like a couple different. Oh, and he has Swooper. And it looks like this is like the best density of non-floaties for him to run into. So I think a lot of people are thinking about Slug for this Saturday as well.
He had that good run at Function 1, of course.
Oh, yeah. He killed it.
Yeah. So
he shouldn't be back for
it's really insane to look at this. The fact that we have gone this long, we have not mentioned Ginger, right? Ginger, really good player, top 20 in the world. He just beat Plup, and we're only mentioning him now.
I know.
It's a testament just how stacked this entire event is.
Yeah, it's going to be sick also, just like from the start of pools, because you have matches like Whiskers versus Moki to make it out of winners.
That's insane.
So it's like starting at like 1 o'clock, like it's just going to be straight top 100 matches, which is going to be nutty to think about. Yeah, we didn't even get into like what are the potential pools upset. There's no way to track it. It's really difficult.
It's too much. There's so many good players here, but there's so many good players. Maybe we have to just like we got to make a gut call. I'll start. There's a lot of good players here who can win this event. We mentioned them all, and there's players who we didn't mention who could still win, which is crazy, right? That's how stacked this event is. Player who we did mention, I'm going to just pick the guy who I mentioned first as a player to watch. I legitimately think that Aklo is a player with an incredible chance to do this, and I think that is he favored? Probably not. I wouldn't say that he's the odds-on favorite to win, but I am going to say that Aklo is going to take this one. I've got a good feeling about him going into this. Just seeing the way he's played recently, especially at New York City events. I think that this could be the one where he pieces all together. Edwin, we've talked to a lot of people. What do you think? Who's the guy who comes out on top of all this?
So I'm going to assume that I'm not contractually obligated to pick pipsqueak.
Sorry, yeah, Melee Stats pipsqueak is going to win his second consecutive event. But if I had to pick another person, I would pick Aklo.
Twitter.
Yeah, I think you know what I'm going to say. I think Cody pulls it out. I think it is insane that Cody has not dominantly held on to what I think most people would expect him to have, the whole like King of New York title. I think this is the tournament where he's finally going to prove it. I think this is his like warm-up tournament for Summit. If he ends up going to this tournament, I think I know he said he's not feeling well and he wants to make sure he's like healthy and stuff. But if he ends up going, I think this is a good opportunity for Cody to really cement himself as the closest to dethroning Zayn. I think this is a great opportunity for him to rise to the occasion. I think he's going to do it. So I'm going to go with him.
Ryobeat?
I am going to second what you said. I think this is Aklo Day. I think he's going to do it. He's going to make the run. I will say that a sleeper pick that I have is I think Slug is going to get top 3. I think his path of Sora into Moki, and if he wins that, he plays. I think even if he loses to Moki at that place, like he doesn't have a ton of competition in losers unless Wally and B-Bats make the most insane run. The only way I think Slug loses is if somehow a floaty gets to him, but it doesn't look like his path is filled with it. And I think he's on a better side of bracket. I think he'd much rather see Moki and J-Mook than he would Cody and Aklo or Ginger or something. Wait, we really didn't talk about Ginger yet.
No, we didn't. He's so good, and we've not talked about him.
Hey, I mean, he could still make a run. He could very easily be. Oh, and then there's Swift. Swift could also. I don't know. This tournament's crazy, but my heart's on Aklo. That's all I gotta say. I don't want to drag it.
I mean, we
2 Aklos, 1 Cody. That's wild.
2 Aklos, 1 Cody. My favorite video on the internet. I'm looking forward to this event. I think this will be like there's a fantasy for this, and I think that if you are, hey, you know what? If you're the type of person who's watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, I think fantasy would be the right thing for you. It's gonna be super fun. I first event in a while where I was not like involved in seeding, so I was like, oh, cool. I'll make a fantasy. I won't feel like I'm rigging this. So I made one. It was very fun. I think like I went through so many different choices because I was just like, wait, this player can do well. This player can do well. I mean, literally all these players can do well. It's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be incredibly entertaining. I cannot wait to watch this, truly. Sad I can't go, but, I'll go to Function 3.
Yes, all I will say is, in terms of how I'm feeling about Function, like a bunch of people are super excited. I'm personally still a little nervous, just it's a big project. It's, I think it's going to be a little cramped in there. I'm hoping that people are courteous and, move as they need to move. And hopefully the bar allows them to just go outside a little more, so it frees up space. But I will say for anyone, I don't know, the people that tune into this type of thing or whatever, like my plan with Function 3 is that clearly I think there's a need to do an event that's 300, 400, 500 Melee players in New York City. But the most important thing for me that I'm looking at is like if our viewership's really good, if all the players show up and they have a good time and stuff like that, any like cool sound bites, and I'm going to try to like pitch to a bunch of sponsors using data from this event, and then hopefully Function 3 is a convention center. That would be the dream.
Yeah, that would be the dream.
Yeah, I am working on it. That's like one of my main roles at this event is just going to be like, just collecting all the data, seeing like average Twitch viewership, all that type of stuff. And
watch hours is key, Nico.
I know watch hours is key. It is key. Well, luckily we're streaming on BTS, so we robbed them a little bit.
Nice.
But yeah.
Well, it's incredible to see what you've done with Function, and hearing about the plans for Function 3. Even before anything gets done, is still amazing to see what you've grown. I know we talked about this a little bit ago, and this was like very pointed discussion about NYCMelee. But let's talk like a little broader for just a little bit, because I think a lot of these points we did pick up on there. But what do you think about like how to rebuild a scene, right? It's how to build, it's how to rebuild post-COVID. I think that there's a lot of confusion as to like why people would want to go to a Melee tournament, right? There's a lot of stuff like this. You are currently running. I mean, where's the ETOS numbers? Is Nightclub the best region? Or sorry, the best local in terms of pure entrance, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So you're running the biggest local in America right now, in the world. What are the secrets to success, and how do you build a scene like this?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts. I'm gonna hopefully it comes out of my mouth in a way that's like neat, but I will do my best. So I think the first person I really want to I guess bring up in terms of where my opinion on stuff kind of came from and how I kind of differ from people, and also just like talking about the past a little bit, is hacks. I think this is important to bring up because Hax's Nightclub was this thing that I think tried to do a little bit of what you said of like top down type of growth, where like he uses his name in the logo, right? He uses his own stream, and then he creates a tournament around it, and it gets all these views, right? Like it probably had more views than this current nightclub, and name brand whatever. But I actually think like I was thinking a lot about like scene growth even before he got banned or whatever, about like how he went about it. But I think one of my core values of growing the local is that like the most important thing is growing everybody in the scene on all different like roles and hats that you have. Like I think what Hacks tried to do, and I think what a lot of companies or corporations whatever try to do in terms of growing Melee, is like, okay, we need the biggest thing right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the biggest name to put his name on the front. We're going to commission all the biggest, graphic designers that we have no idea who they are. They're just outside the region, and we get them to do these things. We're going to partner with all the biggest names, whatever. And then we're going to come up with this like spectacular project. Now, here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about, that, there's a lot of, sadly, as we all like to call them, hacks truthers, who will just be like, oh, blah blah, ban for whatever, blah blah, and they just defend him forever. But one thing he really wasn't good at doing, and one thing I really credit myself for doing, is like he never laid a foundation for NYC to move without him. Like he controlled everything. He controlled the tournament, the stream. All the TOs are just like were people that were like particularly just trying to help out Hacks and not trying to help out NYC. So when he left, we had nothing. No Discord, no Twitter, no stream, no staff members, because it just was all focused on him. So my like key thing, because of that and because of just how I've seen Melee happen in the past, is just like I'm going to build up as many people in the local as I can. And how do I do that? I just I see who are like the passionate people in the community and what type of skills we have, and just try to utilize them the best I can. And like I literally every person that comes in, I like try to ask them about their major, where they're from, how they got involved in Melee, and like I'll just hear like one skill that I think is important, and I try to like latch onto it. So like for example, the NYCMelee logo is from a nightclub attendee who does graphics and stuff like that. We have a bunch of commentators who have come up that are not Zane and stuff like that, who put in a bunch of passion and stuff like that. We've had people do the social media, now joining in on the TO team. Brando, legendary person who's in chat, was not a production person. He just had an interest in it, and he like grew on top of that. So like anyone that had like some type of skill and some type of passion, instead of just being like, oh well, I'm Ryobeat, I've been in the scene 10 years, I'm just gonna do everything. I'm like, you know what? You run with it. Here's like my experience with TOing and being in the community that I think gives good context to what you're doing, but I can't build out all the skills like everyone else can. And that's like at the forefront of everything that I do, even with top players. I'm not like I'm trying to help them grow their individual brands so that they can bring that to the nightclub, as opposed to just using their name and then leaving it that. I always tell players like, hey, when you're coming to the nightclub, like make sure to tweet out your own combos, your own clips, make sure to shout out your stream. We interview everyone so people get to be familiar with the players. And stuff like that. It's kind of like a core value that I bring to everything, is just like investing in all the people who are consistently at the local, who are passionate, and then kind of like putting them to work and putting them to grow like together. Because then I think what you get is just like, from function, like currently function 2 compared to function 1, we have like 10 more people who are happy to do setups, who are happy to run bracket, or happy to what the graphic that we just came out with for the commentators, that was just done by someone in the Discord. We made a Skillshare thing where we're just writing down, sorry, I have another one to mention. Sorry, I'm just kind of rambling, but
No,
Ford,
go ahead.
Ford 4D, he does all the video work. He's like, yeah, I like shoot music videos, and I wouldn't have known that if I didn't just socialize with all the people in my local. He's like, yeah, I have this really fancy camera. That's how we get all the trailers. Brando, he's like, yeah, I make raps. Oh, how good could I be? Incredible. Everyone loves the function trailer. Just stuff like I think like sometimes I always feel a little bad when people are just like, oh, like, so how do you run a monitor tournament, or like what's the best way to run a bracket? I don't really know that. But I think what I do know is like how to connect to everybody at the local, and how to use my context in the scene and my people building skills to like turn that into like tangible things that we can use to like grow the local, is kind of the approach I go about.
Yeah, it really seems like a lot of your approach is based on developing and knowing your personnel, right?
Oh my god. All right, say it, Edwin. Edwin talks to me about personal development all the time. He thinks that he's Bill Belichick. He talks to me as if he's like he's like, yeah, dude, I met this person, I know they're perfect for it. So go ahead, say it, Edwin. Talk about personal development.
It's literally so important. And Nico, what you're saying is like sincerely. I mean, this is something I talk about with Wheat and Ambi to like an annoying amount, right? I always talk about.
I will attest to that.
Yeah, I always talk about the importance of personnel in Smash, and I want to yes and what you're saying here. I think so many people think of things in the scene in terms of like name recognition and like one person doing everything, right? They always think like, oh well, I do this, so I know what's right in this area, in this area, in this area, in this area, right? And it's like, well, that's not how you like grow a scene, right? Like you grow a scene through knowing the people that you have and like knowing the skills that they can to this like ecosystem, right? And like knowing how they can further develop those skills in accordance with each other, right? I think that's so important. Not just, I mean, that's important in life, just in general, but like I think Smash is actually like a really wonderful place to develop a lot of these skills in an environment that's maybe a little more friendly and a little more, even though it may not always appear like that. Like if you're an online content creator, if you do anything in the Smash sphere, obviously you're going to have throngs of people that'll try to take away credit from you and try to or worse, try to attribute it to someone else and say that like you're an imposter or whatever. But I think like anyone who's actually been to a tournament or like seen the work that you and the NYCMelee team put in, like yeah, I think like you guys have definitely earned it. I think I think it really pays dividends when you grow a community with multiple contributors, and when you have these people that are able to come together with their respective skills and to build something really cool that other people notice, right? I mean, even like NYC, I know New York City Melee has been a thing for a while, just like as a concept, but like correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the NYCMelee Twitter really started taking off in like the last year, right?
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. Like I think I think, well, we never had a Discord. Obviously, Discord got more popular and Slippy got more popular. But before it was like Neb's Twitter, but that also encompassed like PM and card shop stuff. Hacks never had anything for NYC. It was just, Hacks tweeting out his Twitch link every Wednesday. And then there was no there was like a Hacks nightclub Discord, but not an NYCMelee Discord. So it include a lot of people who are out of the region, that type of thing. So yeah, this is the first time where we have our own Twitch, our own Twitter, and our own Discord, where it's like, what's the community here? It's like, you live in New York City or you attend New York City events, like that's your catch-all. And that's way better than like, oh, what's Hacks' catch-all? It's like, you are a follower of this top player, and or just like the corporation, like, I don't know. I mean, I thought of like 3 sponsor names that have Discords that don't really do anything, and I didn't want to call them out because they sponsor play. But you know what I mean. Stuff like that. I think it makes more sense when it's like, that's the clear. For Twitter, I will say, like, I do delegate a lot, and a lot of skills are given out, and I'm like, mine is, I guess, like the people connecting and the delegating. But I think my actual like skill set I bring Melee is probably the social media aspect. I think that I've just done it a lot throughout time. I've advertised a lot of events before. I've advertised for Nebs. And yeah, the Twitter right now is like at like 1,800 or something like that, like pretty organic. And yeah, I think my biggest role in all this is just like the reason I'm so passionate about daily posts on Twitter and daily posts in Discord and having a really neat stream is that like, that's kind of the ad to just get in the scene and then, make those like friendships and connect those people. And then from there, like, they run with it. Like there's a lot of like art stuff and film stuff and photography. Oh, we have a photographer too. Shout out to Vay. She did all the function photography. Like that person, like people like Vay, Brando, Ford, those people, like they didn't even exist in Hacks' nightclub time. Like we never got to utilize like their skills or whatever. But now we have just like this huge pool of people that we could just pick from. It's like, oh, you do photography, you do coding, all that stuff.
It's a foundation.
Yeah, I think yeah, exactly. It's honestly like once function is over, like that's probably like, I'm gonna stress that even more because I think right now I still do a little too much work in NYCMelee, like one for my own mental health, but also because I think even I see the problem with just focusing it on one person, because it's like if I'm ever out of a nightclub, like there's a lot of functions that can't happen anymore, and that's not good because eventually if I ever retire from the game or I just get really busy with work or something, I don't want the whole thing to just come down because I'm not in it. I want to be able to pass off to whoever it is who at some point will be more passionate than me and have cooler ideas than me, and I'll be like, you know what, it's yours now. And I want it to rather like someone like jokingly once says like, oh well, let's just do what we did before. Why don't we call it like Ryobeat's nightclub? You do all this work or whatever. I'm like, no, dude, because that's how you transform like a foundational thing into like a top-down thing. And then if people just recognize it as like, oh, Ryobeat's like the coolest guy ever, and he's the guy who does it, then once I'm not there, they're like, oh, I guess it's not going to be cool anymore. And that's the type of thing I'm trying to avoid.
I think it's it makes sense, right? If there's a situation where you need to leave, if it were all you, then seems like NYCMelee is, you're taking it with you. But if you are to build up everything around you to the point where, one piece does not suddenly topple the whole thing. I think that's a really good way of just like building a scene, right? Because that's what you're building. You're actually building a scene when you say that. It's not even just building a tournament, because that's what connects it, right? That's what connects nightclub to function to all whatever other goes from there. I think one last thing I want to ask you about TOs. So that's a really good talk about how to grow what you already have. Do you have any thoughts on how TOs get people to locals right now? Like how to get the butts in the seats to begin with?
That could be a big question because there's so many different incentives. I think of, you think of stream advertisements, Twitter advertisements, appealing to net play, that type of thing. I think what I'll try to answer it with is, in terms of getting people to the local, I'm going to not talk as much about that because I think that one I can answer with, I guess, like lukewarm answers that can hold people over to like at least start to thinking of like, get more, like easy ones are like get more active on Twitter and make your own region's Twitter handle, make your own Discord. You know, what's it called? Have a really good stream that clearly shows like how to get to the local if you were interested after watching. Net play tournaments that feed into locals and stuff like that. What I think is really important that people don't harp on, and something I really pay attention to, is if you see a new person at the local, you need to make sure that they stay there. And I think more so about not just like how do you recruit people to the local, but how do you have local player retention? How do you get people to come multiple weeks in a row, not just one? Because I think a lot of people don't realize is that for most new people in the event, it's like maybe they'll see Melee one time, they get excited because it's cool, but then they go in, they know nobody at all, they're not very welcomed in any way. They get double 3 stocked in 2 sets, and then they walk out the door. Because then, you know, after you're done, you just look around, it's just more people playing. It's just like, well, I already got fucked up doing that, and I don't really know anybody, so I'm just gonna leave. So I really, really like when there's a new person at the event, like I have an Excel sheet that like I do check-in for, and I put little highlights next to the people who are new attendees, so I keep my eye out for them. Like, first of all, when I like greet them, like, hey, this is your first tournament, right? I haven't seen your name around here. And they're like, yeah, no, it is. And I'm like, well, how'd you get into the game? Like, what's your major? What brings you to New York? That type of thing. And then like my little secret to, I hope, you know, no new player sees this, but like anytime I see like that new player walk away, I'm like, all right, nice to meet you later. I'll like go to like someone who's been playing for a while. It's like, yo, you see that person right there? Like that person is like brand new. Like you need to make sure they have a good experience. Make sure you teach them how to wave dash. Make sure you get them on NYCMelee Discord, the Twitter, all that stuff. Like I send my little veteran hounds to make sure they're all like included, welcome. Someone buys them a drink, that type of thing. I also will do a thing where I'm like, hey, you're a brand new player. This is your first tournament. That person over there this is their second tournament. So you should play them because it's going to be like a closer match and you won't get destroyed. And that's very rewarding. You know, it feels bad if you can't wave dash, but if you have 2 people who can't wave dash, then it's like, holy shit, this is so competitive. This is sick. So I really focus a lot on player retention, like, you know, making sure they have things to do after they are eliminated in bracket, making sure they have people to play that's their level, and plugging them into all of the like pipelines almost. I always get a little flattered when like I'll like TO and then 3 hours later I'm like, okay, God, I've been so busy. I haven't talked to all the new players because I try to make that a goal. I'll go up to them and say, like, hey, blah, blah, nice to meet you. Are you in the Discord? And I'm like, yeah, actually 7 people already asked me to be in it. I'm in it. Okay. And I'm like, good. Okay. My people got to you. Stuff like that. I super think about. I also message like new players at the end of the event. Like, hey, thank you so much for coming. Like, it was really awesome to meet you or whatever. Like, am I seeing you next week? Like, you know, that follow up. That's kind of what I focus on.
No, that sounds sick. I really do think that all this is good. And I like all this information because I was a little worried about, well, what is information from a TO in New York, the biggest city in America? What, right. Like, how does that relate to other people? And I really honestly think that, you know, whatever you're doing in New York can just be replicated, right? If you were doing this in Boise, maybe Idaho would have a bigger scene, right? Like, I legitimately think that whatever takeaways there are replicable. You can take this to any part of America. You take this to anywhere, and you can see a scene come from it. This is yeah, no, I appreciate that insight because I was like a little worried. It's like, yeah, well, maybe it's just everyone will be there already because it's NYC. Hearing the thought that gets put into it, I already know just from what I've heard about nightclubs and what I've heard about functions. Not able to attend one yet, but what I know from them, I already knew that a lot of thought went into it. But just hearing all this, yeah, it shows that there's really levels, and if people want to put that effort in, there will be stuff to come out of it. And I think that's a good thing that if people who are looking to TO are already TOing, you know, it is a lot of effort. It sounds like a lot of effort just hearing you say it. So I'm sure it is a lot of effort doing it every week. But it really does seem like putting that much of effort into stuff will come out with something. So Nico, we had that question. We've got some, we're going to move on to some questions that we got from the Patreon. So you know what, Edwin? They've been good recently. We usually make fun of them. It's like week on, week off. We'll make fun of them, and they'll come back with good ones, and then the next week they'll have nothing. They've been coming up with some good questions. So I'm going to ask one from probably the person who's had maybe the most questions asked on this. This is SSB Seal, Top 64 Genesis Seal. Who are some up and coming Peach players that people should watch out for in the next few years?
Damn. I haven't been asked
He
about
told me a
Peach
couple
in
players
so
he does not
long.
want you to say. So I will not let you. I will not say them. I will let you know if you say one of them who's off limits.
Okay.
He's got a couple of obvious answers that he doesn't think you should take.
Okay. Peach players that are up and coming, and also I know I don't want to do the surface level answers. That's especially as a Peach player that would look bad. It's like, wow, you only know like Wally. I really like Swaggerbee. This is a person who enters Gale a lot, and she's really sick. I have a lot of faith in Sir Maris if he ever wants to enter more than
from West Virginia,
once.
right?
Yeah. I really like Vincessant was on a really good path, but then just kind of like stopped playing as much. And as a last pick, Asuka, the hardest working Peach. He streams like every day for 5 hours. He's always on the grind. He's always in a good mood. He's always analyzing. Coached him a lot. Sometimes I'll like go into his stream and just like he's like, oh, I don't know what to do about Sheik, and I don't want to let him know because it's nerdy, but like I have such an admiration for what he does. Like I love people who radiate love for like the game and their character, and he embodies that. So like sometimes I'll just be like, I'm on my lunch break, but I'll get on a Discord call with you, and I'll just be like, all right, you need to do this. He's like, okay. Later, he's like, am I bothering you? I'm like, no, you need to fly. You could do this. So I guess him and Arcane Troy if he wants to play a little more, but I know he's more on the labbing side.
Those are some really fun answers, and you also did you successfully avoided all of the landmines that Steel set out. He said he did not want you to mention Wally, Aura, or Jamron. He said he needs the real deep cuts, and I think you gave us those. Those are. Hey, you know what? SF, our intern, said Asuka. So you guys are on a similar wavelength. So I think everyone's pretty hyped about that answer. Edwin, do we have another question for Nico?
Yeah, this one is from a fellow Melee Stats member, Algebra 123230. Since you're a teacher, Nico, and started in the scene very young, what are the best ways to be inviting to young players while still keeping them safe?
The best way, I think about this a ton actually. So if you have young players in your scene, same things that I said before, Discord, blah, 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 blah. I let them, I always let people know if new players are there, but I also let people know when someone's a minor on the side, because I think you have different conversations, no sex, no drugs, no
rock and roll.
No rock and roll. No. But I think one thing that's really important is as a teacher, parent outreach. I think it's really important to, if you have a minor in your scene, establish that connection. Like I always say, like, if I know a minor that's like currently competing, I say like, hey, if you ever want like your parent to talk to me or in some way, like let me know. Here's my phone number. Like just take it. Like I have my phone on at all times, and I think parents definitely feel better sending their kid to a video game tournament with a bunch of drunken, sweaty men if they at least know what's happening, what time, where's the address, and who can they contact if something's wrong with their child. So I always give my contact information to any minor in the scene. For what's it called? For people that are just brand new that aren't minors, I'm just like, here's my Discord. If I know they're under 18, I'm like, take my phone number and give it to your family or a brother or something like that. And I just like, keep an extra eye on them, I just make sure, they're not around people who are like drinking a ton. I really stress the parent thing. I know high schoolers are like, well, don't talk to my mom. I'm like a grown up. And it's like, like half a grown up, I always say, I'm just liable for you. I have to. But I think parent communication is a big one. If they can see the stream, if they can see you, if a parent comes in, you 100% got to talk to them as well. If anytime I see like a mom, like, that person music hits on Twitch, I think he's like that little kid at Genesis who took pictures with everybody.
Oh, OG Kid.
OG Kid. I ran into him on Ranked today.
Yeah.
Destroyed him?
No, he's good,
He's
dude.
pretty good.
He's solid.
But
He
you
went
still
2-2
won.
at Genesis. He was pretty good. But yeah,
Yeah,
his
he's
mom
good.
was there. And I introduced myself. I don't want to be like, yeah, I'm like, my tag is Beer Man. Or I'm not saying Ryobeat. I'm just like, hey, I'm Nico. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I try to let them know, I'm not like a degenerate adult. I'm like, I work in schools and stuff like that. So I'm reliable. I gave her my phone number. Even if I never see her again, I'm like, if you have any questions about the scene, let me know. I think he lives in upstate New York. So I'm like, yeah, if you guys are ever visiting, that type of thing. And I just I always offer anyone to keep a watch on the minor. Also, don't invite them to any Smash Fest. Always keep it in public places. That is very important.
That sounds like some good advice. Some very thoughtful advice from patron questions and just from the the normal topics. I really do like your outlook on all this. But here we got one more question. I feel like the last 2 weeks we asked favorite pizza topping, and you being from New York would be a good good question. But we've got a little bit of a better one. This is from the man, the myth, the legend. We've been talking about him. Probably the most mentions he's gotten on a single podcast. This is talking from SF. SF asked, who would win in a salty sweet between you and Steech?
Oh my god, the lore here is so good.
There is some lore here. I can explain if you'd like.
The lore is like, oh, West Coast is free because Zane has to play Ryobeat and this person has to play Steech.
Yes.
Look,
that Steech just won the SoCal Acadian.
He did
pretty dominantly. Did very
pretty
well.
Good. Look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I don't know how many years or months I have to stop playing to like lose, but I'm not there yet. Please trust me in that. I play a decent amount of unranked. I still, I went to I got 5th in doubles, on a full-time job. Like if I entered singles, I don't know. I mean, I still play top players all the time. There's no doubt in my mind that I don't win that, or I absolutely win that. There's no way I don't. No comment. West Coast is free. They are free. I'm sorry, dude. Actually, the funniest thing happened recently that truly proved. I'm only bringing this up because Brando's in chat that I'm still a good Melee player, which is we all had a Smash Fest, like me, Ja, Kata, Jib, Wally, Willie P, all these people. And we were drunk and stuff, listening to music, having a good time. It's like, oh, let's do like a draft crew battle. And, I was on one of the draft teams and I had to play like Kata, Vino, Nil Folan, or Phil Nolan. And then there was one other person and they're like, oh, Nico's drunk or whatever. And, he always says that he's retired or whatever. And like, I think I took like 13 or 14 stocks while shit talking them. And oh yeah, I played Ja, and like every time I took a stock, I said Ja more like nah. And then like the other side, like they were cheering for me, like my crew was cheering for me while I was like drunkenly beating Kata's ass, and I was just like, but guys, you don't have to cheer for me. Like go eat the Chinese food. Like it's over. It's not gonna. Just stop. So all is to say is I'm still kind of nasty. I just also TO.
Yeah, I will say, if being like another solid Fox is any indication or set against it, you did beat Harry Pogger, the Hungry Box Slayer, at Smash.
Dude,
so I think I like your chances against Steech.
I had a very funny story about playing Harry Pogger, which was we sit down. I'm like, hey, we played on NetPlay a good amount. Like, nice to meet you for the first time. And he goes, I hope you're not as filthy as you are on NetPlay. And which I proceeded like the last 2 games to 3-stock him. And in my head, I'm like, sorry, man, I think I am. He was just like, fuck, you are kind of nasty. SFAT and Zealot fucked me up though, so I can't say anything.
Okay. Well, I for one, I'm on your side. I think you'll win until we inevitably have Steech on, and then who knows?
And we have to explain ourselves.
Maybe I'll change my reasoning when Steech comes on here. Steech, who I don't think wants to leave SoCal. I think that even Genesis was like, I don't need to travel there. So we'll see. When Steech becomes like top 50 by only going to SoCal events, which is historically doable, then we'll maybe
issue is that the West Balls win doesn't count as hard anymore.
True.
Usually that's what got you there, but now it's like, hey, I beat West Balls. I'm like, yeah, so they're like everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, join the club, right? Whoever Dugo hasn't. But yeah, I'm very excited. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll set up a salty sweet at some point soon. But Nico, we're kind of rolling down to the end of the show here. We've got a segment, officially unnamed, but colloquially known as Touching Grass. We have been talking about Melee for about 2 hours now. And basically, the idea behind this segment is to try to shine a light on something that's been going on in our lives that does not have anything to do with Melee, right? We are not monoliths. We are able to have fun in the world that is not Melee. So I'll go first. I'll give you guys some time to think. This past week, I would have loved to say that my touching grass moment was getting back to concerts. It's been actually, I think only a few weeks, but I had a concert for an artist who I love called Indigo D'Souza. She was supposed to play last night. It got postponed because someone had COVID. But what I did instead is I continued to watch a lot of Barry. So Barry is an HBO show starring Bill Hader. Season 3 just started. I watched the first episode of season 3. Thought it was really good, but I also did think that it's been a while since I saw it. And I was like, you know what? It's like 8 episodes apiece per season, 30-minute episodes. I will just catch back up, right? How quick can it take? I'm about halfway through season 2. I think it took me about 2 or 3 days. It is a great show. It is. It's about Bill Hader as a hitman. Very funny, but is able to also deliver a lot of dramatic moments. I think he won an Emmy. I think he won an Emmy for his acting there. He does a great job. A lot of really funny people there. So I have been rewatching that. If you have the time and have HBO, I guess is probably the thing there. I would say I'd recommend it. It definitely is something where, if you want to put 2 hours into it, just see if you like it, put an hour into it. That's 4 episodes, that's 2 episodes, dip your toes in, see if it works, because I think it's really a great show. Edwin, you have been talking about your touching grass moment before the show. You talked about how excited you were to reveal your touching grass moment. Let us hear it. What's been going on with you this past week?
All right, so I mentioned this in the Discord server. I think I've brought up this game on the show already, but I am in a couple weeks. Me and my friends are from my hometown are going to be playing in a Pokemon Stadium tournament against each other with the rental-only Pokemon, and we have our draft coming up for which Pokemon we're gonna set up. So we're trying to avoid repeats. So I've been spending a bit of today thinking about a potential draft board and what that would look like as far as my first pick or second pick or third pick or whatnot. And it's pretty interesting because the thing is, you have to remember this is in Pokemon Stadium, right? So some of the movesets don't really make sense for some of the Pokemon, and some of them are just absurdly busted because it's not balanced very well. So I'm pretty interested. I think Alakazam will probably go first out of all the Pokemon that are there. I really have no idea though. The one thing is that I think I'm not going to. So I'm running this tournament. I think I'm probably not going to allow Mew or Mewtwo. Although I don't think you can play as Mewtwo.
Dude, I've always wanted to do a rental Pokemon draft. Those look so fun.
Yeah,
I think I always loved playing Pokemon Stadium for N64 as a kid, and it's just wow, I get Charmander with the greatest moves ever, or Charizard with Rock Smash. I love making dumb decisions like that.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do that sometime. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Who do you think? Who would your number one pick be? I feel like Alakazam is pretty safe, right?
Wait, what gen?
Oh, Gen 1 for the first Pokemon Stadium, N64.
Oh, and oh, you're saying the literal game. What would always be my pick? I would always pick I feel like Haunter or Gengar are really broken.
Gengar is pretty good.
Yeah, I think sometimes Haunter maybe had more aggressive moves, and Gengar was kind of a tank in the Stadium. I forget how it went. I would pick one of those.
Edwin, tell me, is this just people saying, "Yeah, Marth's faster, but Roy hits harder"? Is this the equivalent? Because I have no idea anything in this game.
For what it's worth,
wait, you're talking about between Haunter or Gengar?
Yeah.
I like Gengar's move list more, but Haunter is better. Or excuse me, I like Haunter's move list a little more, but Gengar is better. Like overall stats. So like
he is faster. It
yeah.
perfectly fits the thing.
Okay, so they're both good.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I keep asking you. You do this. You've done this for like 2 weeks already. I don't want to ask you more questions, make you go on further. Cool. You're doing a Pokemon Stadium rental draft. Very fun. I'm sure I will hear about it once again when you do it.
Yeah, I have an update.
And I might hear. Weeks. Yeah, I was gonna say we'll probably hear about it in the coming weeks. Nico, you are a busy man. You're the podcast. You're the Apple the podcast eye of the Melee podcaster's eye right now. Radio Melee in here.
Because it's like, oh, what's your touching grass moment? We're not just Melee. In my head, I have to remind myself that I'm not, or at least as I feel the stress and function week, where it's just all I think about, and I have the suitcase of another Smasher right here, so it's like, yeah, I touch grass, like not much recently, but one touch grass moment. I've been trying to remind myself to touch grass. I don't do it often. But when I do, 2 things, I guess. On Thursday, does it count if I hang out with Pipsqueak? I'm touching grass with him.
Sure.
We're going to see a movie. We're going to see Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'm going to go with Zane and Gabe and probably some other people and Pipsqueak. We're going to see that movie and go to like a very nice restaurant with Pip.
Nico, that was my touching grass moment a couple weeks ago.
Ooh, dude.
I saw it, and then Stude at Genesis was like, does anyone want to see this? And I was like, I'll see it again. And then 2 people who are close to me and who are in an organization with me, which I will not name, they both flaked. So it's just me and Stude who went on like a little date, I guess.
Hell
2 large men just going to see a movie. No, I want to hear back from you. I'm sure Zane will talk to me about it. It is, I won't say anything.
Yeah, he's the film guy. He's gonna have to talk to you about it.
Yes, or else there will be hell to pay.
Oh yeah. The other thing I'm doing is I am going to a concert with my coworker, which I'm excited about because I usually don't honestly socialize much outside of Melee friends. So I'm excited to get a little out of my comfort zone. But I'm gonna go see Beach Bunny, one of my favorite bands. Yeah, and it's my second time seeing them, so I'm super stoked. They were amazing the first time, and I think they're gonna be amazing the second time. And that's happening Summit week. So I will come home drunkenly at like 1 a.m. and then I will watch J-Mook Tech Chase Leffen. So it'll be a perfect weekend.
Truly sounds like it.
That sounds beautiful. J-Mook Tech Chasing Leffen. I want to match what I want to see.
Well, I'm jumping up in the crowd. It's like everyone's recording Beach Bunny and I got my hands jumping up and down, but it's just like Jake down throwing. I'm like, yeah, it's like, or everyone's like, hey, put your camera down. But some other people are like, wait, put your camera up. What game is this?
Of course, before we get to Summit, we need to get to Function. Function's coming up this weekend. Instead of seeing J-Mook Tech Chase Leffen, we'll see J-Mook Tech Chase Aklo or something. Nico, if people want to watch Function, where can they do so?
Where can they watch it? They can watch it at BTS Smash for the mainstream and for the side stream, NYCMelee. I would also follow NYCMelee on Twitter for all the updates and cool clips and stuff, and my own Twitter at Ryobeat for me retweeting NYCMelee, and also maybe my own little flavor about it.
A consummate professional, you got all the plugs in one go.
Ooh, yeah.
It's been amazing having you on, and if you like hearing the podcast, you can see the episodes over at YouTube. The Melee Stats Archive is where we're going to put all of our episodes after they air. While you're on YouTube, you can go over to Melee Stats. That's where we're going to have our long-form content, our video essays. If you want to see these episodes live, twitch.tv/Melee Stats. Over on Twitter, at the twitter.com/Melee Stats Pod, we'll be releasing tweets about Last Night of Melee, or of course, the player in the month we just named. Of course, we have to shout out Pipsqueak for fucking winning a tournament under our name. So you can follow over there at Melee Stats Pod. MeleeStats.co is where we're going to have articles such as Monday Morning Marth and When's Melee. And if you love everything you do and you just want to support us, patreon.com/Melee Stats. Nico, amazing episode. I thank you so much for being on. Truly insightful. I love to walk away from episodes learning something. and I really think you did do that.
Thank you so
Just
much
one
for
thing-
having me, guys. It's been so
really
much
quick,
fun.
I want to mention, first off, Nico, thank you so much for coming on. We thank you so much for hosting. Tomorrow is our very own Ambus Sinister's birthday.
Oh,
So if you happen to see Ambus Sinister somewhere on the Twitter sphere typing up a storm or coming up with something annoyingly quippy or contrarian or just being part of the discourse in one way or another, be sure to wish him a happy birthday.
hell yeah.
He
I definitely
deserves it.
will.
And then we'll get into maybe next week. We'll maybe talk about a little bit of a Melee Stats birthday.
Ooh, yeah.
There's definitely a big day in Melee Stats history that's coming up a week or two from now, and we'll talk
Hell
about
yeah.
that. But yeah, thank you everyone for being on. Nico, amazing. Edwin, great
Later,
as
guys.
always.
Peace.
We'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, and then we will be around next week to talk about what happens from Function and of course, see you guys then. Peace.
Peace. Later, guys.
Peace.